In a week's time, Trump and some of his team are going to be appearing at Davos, the WEF forum in Davos. And does this mean that they're going to be telling the WF where to go? Or is it all part of a secret plot to put in the Great Reset on the sly? That's what we're going to be talking about in this video.
Hi everybody, this is Alex Krainer. Please follow Crypto Rich. He is one of the best in his business. Pioneer of ending wars through tax non-compliance. Oh, fuck it.
Hey Alex, hey Susan, hey Tom. Good to have you guys back on again. Really love doing this conversation with you all three of you all together. It's wonderful for me. And I'll have the links to where you are and where people can get you. And they should definitely follow all three of you everywhere, all around the internet. And as I said, so Trump is the guest of honor, the headline act at Davos. So obviously people like David Icke and many others are completely correct that what he's doing is implementing the Great Reset and digital IDs and CBDCs on the sly. Like, we got his sleight of hand all wrong. We're the ones who are being fooled. Susan?
Well, look at, first of all, he's taken the whole team. I mean, this is like breaching the castle walls. You know, he's taking Scott Bessent, probably the most important person in his cabinet, in my humble opinion. He's taking Chris Wright. He's taking Jameson Greer, the trade representative. He's taking Howard Lutnick. And if you look at his previous appearances at Davos, he shows up at Davos and he just punches him in the nose. One of the most powerful speech I think he ever gave was in 2020 when he went to Davos right before COVID. And he said the world belongs to optimists and sovereign nations, not you global pessimistic. I mean, he didn't finish the idea, but you know, the rest of us can finish the idea. Evil SOBs, basically.
Well, they call them doomsayers, no?
Doomsayers. That's right. That's right. And of course, their policies will lead to doom. I mean, that's the point. If you implement their policies, we are doomed. And Donald Trump basically said, we don't do that. You know, we're taking the world in a different place. Now, a couple of weeks later, COVID broke out. And, you know, history has taken a very interesting direction since then. But I think it's kind of refined the fight where Trump said what he said then, could not make it back into the presidency for the second term then, which, you know, I think some of us agree is almost a blessing in disguise because it toughened him up. It toughened his movement up. He knows what he's up against. And this team that he's brought together is absolutely delivering. Now, you know, if he's pulling some kind of sleight of hand, why did he just take on BlackRock with this housing statement the other day, saying we're going to end corporate ownership of single-family homes? And if I saw the headlines right, BlackRock's stock dropped 8% the next day or something like that.
It was Blackstone, but yes.
Blackstone.
Blackstone's the private equity.
Right, BlackRock
but it's a subsidiary. It's part of BlackRock.
Exactly. But you know, he's going right at the heart of the cartels. So that's just one little teeny tiny piece. And of course, what he did to the health insurance companies the other day, saying the money should not go to the health insurance companies. It should go to the people. And is trying to implement that. That's just one little slice of what he's doing. And I'll turn it over to Alex and Tom to fill in the rest of it.
Okay, well, as you do, where they can take it, right, is he's saying all that publicly, but in the background, he's sitting down having confabs with Klaus Schwab and Larry Fink about how they can trick us into the digital ID.
Yeah, that's the same argument that I heard that, you know, Putin was a WEF puppet 4 years ago because he used the words, you know, fourth industrial revolution once. There are dumb people in the world with dumb takes. I'm okay with saying it because that's my job. Like, David Icke is an idiot, and we should and anybody who listens to him should, you know, attenuate their time. They should value their time a little more than that. There's a lot of people out there at this point whom you should really think about, you know. And hey, that goes for me. If you don't like what I have to say, Stop. No, it's not a problem. I don't care. This is what's happening. Trump is clearly running the table on these people, and they're going to push back. And the pushback that's coming from Davos and et cetera is going to be couched in such a way that it looks like he's not the quote unquote champion here. Like, that's what they do. Like, the best was them trying to frame him for bombing Putin's house while Zelensky was in, Mar-a-Lago, when that was clearly an MI6 operation. We don't have the intelligence and the human assets on the ground in Russia. We haven't had them there for years to pull off something like that or anything like that. It's not what's going on. Like, there's a lot of, but it's easy to spin this stuff that way. And that slop all comes out of, the various AI generation houses at this point and all of the disinformation agents, and they're everywhere. You watch the number of people that are now trying to shift gears to get back on side. Candace Owens is a perfect example, by the way. Classic example of how now she shifts narratives back, lies about what she said after Charlie Kirk was killed, all of this stuff, and is now, they're all just running the grift. They can see the grift ending. And it's happening in real time. It's happening at light speed. And they don't know what to do. And Trump is pushing the pace here. I was talking to Blaine Holt the other day for the podcast, and that was exactly what I saw. So no, I expect him to go to Davos and, one up his performance at the UN when he walked in with both bags of poop and set them on fire and then blew them across the entire audience with a shotgun. Because that's what that speech was. I can't wait for the speech at Davos. I don't know about you, but my liver is not going to survive it. So, Alex.
Well, you know that they're going to try very, very desperately to derail the cooperation between Russia and the United States. So they're going to try a lot of these things, like spinning the narrative that Trump tried to assassinate Putin. What I find very strange about these things, there's definitely like a Trump derangement syndrome groupthink that's gripped a lot of people, and even some very smart people. And it's come to the point where I was on a podcast recently, and I said, look, we can't be sure because Trump by design is hiding his hand. This is like a war by deception. Mm-hmm. So you have to kind of guess, and nobody really knows. I said, if I had to make up my mind, the guy just dropped 55 doses of childhood vaccinations from the mandatory schedule. Mm-hmm. That should be regarded as a good thing. Well, somebody responded in the comments, yeah, he's lowering the price of drugs because he wants people to take more of them. And I thought, honestly, like, if you half the price of drugs, is everybody going to double their dose? Is like, how deranged does this Trump derangement syndrome get? And so I try to kind of ignore the people with very acute Trump derangement syndrome, but I also try to ignore Trump himself because because he says so many things that the moment you hear them, you think like, oh my God, like he's gone crazy. But he's doing it on purpose. He's doing it on purpose. He sets everybody's hair on fire. And then while people are going crazy, oh, look, he tried to assassinate Putin. Oh, look, he's sending tomahawks to Russia. Oh, Alaska is dead. Look, he said how disappointed he is in Putin. Like, fool me twice, fool me 3 times, fool me 10 times. Isn't somebody going to catch on that something else is going on? Anyway, so I assume that
the big one this week, Alex, is just the big one this week was if he invades Greenland, it's the end of NATO. Like, how about we offer them $6 billion to become citizens? It would be cheaper than Minnesota at this point.
Whatever. And then why does Greenland need to belong to Denmark? Really? Why? What's so sacred about that? Anyhow, I think that Trump's going to Davos not to declare war on them, but to demand their capitulation. And he's going to deliver a speech that's going to go viral in the mainstream media. But I think that the real blows are going to come in behind closed doors.
Mhm.
And I think that they know it's coming. I think that they know it's coming. And then, the news that were announced yesterday, which was Thursday, 8th January, that the United States was withdrawing from 66 international organizations. There's a lot there. Trump derangement syndrome people are going to foam at their mouth again. They're going to say, oh, he's blowing up international cooperation. No, mate. Learn about these international organizations. Understand what they are, that they enjoy almost worldwide legal immunity, tax exemptions, all kinds of privilege. They are magnets for criminal, illicit activity like drugs, people smuggling, all kinds of very ugly everything. And they are, they're like their headquarters are inviolable, their archives are inviolable. You can't bring legal actions against them. If you bring anything to court, it's not admissible because their documents are inviolable. So even if you get proof, it's worthless. You just have to suck it up, and they get to do whatever they want. Do you ever wonder how come Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci are walking free? Nobody brought them to court for anything. There's a reason. Okay. Anyway, so I'm kind of feeling excited about this, and I think that he's not going to. Also, another thing that I have to point out: if Trump wanted to bring us into the global matrix with CBDCs and digital IDs and so forth, why the whole deception? The whole world is already moving in that direction. You don't need to deceive anybody. You could just say like, hey, Bill Gates, hey, Klaus Schwab, let's get on with it. I'm in charge now, and I'm going to force all this on my people. Why would he need to do all this deception? Anyway, go ahead.
I have an answer. I have an answer to that, Alex. I have an answer. To fool miscreants like us four and many others, that we go along with this Pied Piper, and therefore we don't actually align and form and unite and form a real opposition.
Well, I'd like someone to give me the pieces of what that real opposition actually looks like.
Interesting. I was on this morning. I was on this show this morning, right? And we were talking about this very thing, actually, about digital IDs, and I said, if the Genius and the Clarity Act, which are the things that create the crypto regulations and the stablecoin rules and everything else, that's all the big backdoor for this grand new CBDC architecture and everything else. Then why are the forces aligned so terribly within our Congress, which clearly works for the globalist institutions in every way? Why are they slowing down the adoption of them? Why are they trying to do everything imaginable to stop and to defang them in the ways that need? I mean, I'm sorry. What level? How many chess is that you think we're playing here? I'm just a little confused by this. How about it looks like a rock and it is a fucking rock and it just came through the window? It's not that tough. How about you just come on for the board for the big win? Wouldn't that be nice? Because the thing is that's really quite frustrating. It's not that we all want to be cheerleaders. I have a patron who's like, I don't want to be, I don't want to, be a cocknobber or anything. I'm like, dude, stop listening to Robert Barnes. Like, I know where that talking point comes from. I literally know where that comes from, right? And I'm like, stop it. It's okay to be on the right. It's okay to take a side and be on the team. And then it's also okay to criticize when he makes tactical errors. And he makes tactical errors all the time. All the time. Like, I'm not sure how well he's going to handle this Minnesota, the woman getting shot by the ICE agent for trying to run over the ICE agent. Like, they're not playing this thing perfectly. They didn't play the Epstein files very well. There's many things that they've done that are tactically not brilliant. But the people who take those little missteps and blow them into, oh my God, he's destroying MAGA, dude, maybe they just work for somebody else and maybe they're the Pied Pipers.
And probably they haven't read anything relevant like the national security strategy. I mean, what Alex said in terms of the 66 institutions, it's right there. It says, we're not going to play by these transnational institutions any longer that undermine our country. Maybe they haven't read Besant's intro to the Financial Stability Oversight Committee, where he said we're no longer prioritizing the financial parasites, we're prioritizing household income. And then what happens over the course of the next couple of weeks? They go after the health insurance companies. They go after the defense contractors. They go after the housing industry. So they say they're going to do these things and then they do them.
So with the health insurance companies, what he said was, for people who don't know, he said that instead of the money, the government giving money to the insurance companies, that money should go directly to American citizens who can then direct it where they want to direct it, and that would bring down their health costs because you wouldn't be subsidizing the insurance companies. And then with regards to the Blackstone, he said he's stopped big institutions like Blackstone from buying up homes, which means that families, individuals, American citizens don't have to compete with the deep pockets of Blackstone. So that will drop house prices, make them more affordable. He's using some of the $200 billion of revenue or profit that Freddie and Fannie had raised to make homes even cheaper, like to make it cheap, mortgages cheaper for American citizens. Hold on. Now, what's he doing with the defense company? Defense companies, I think he said, is that they can't have such large profits or something?
He's saying that you're not going to get contracts if first of all, he's telling the executives it's capped at $5 million in terms of your what you get. He says, now that seems like a lot of money to a lot of people, but these guys get obscenely amounts of money. But he also said, and I think this is even more important, you can't take your profits and plow them into stock buybacks. Mm-hmm. You've got to take your profits and actually build stuff faster and better. Mm-hmm. So, he's gone directly at the military industrial complex. And we know that, the funding for Congress in terms of the defense contractors and in terms of the health insurance industry, that's what, keeps these congressmen afloat. But look at your average working class or, young American. You take on the cost of health insurance and you take on the question of the ability of you to buy a home before you're 60 years old. You're addressing some of the most important questions as we go into the midterm elections. So, I keep laughing. These are the kinds of policies that in the old days, Democrats used to champion, right? Where are, and Trump is just saying, well, I happen to be president of the United States, so I'm just going to do it.
Well, and it's really funny. And so to talk about the Fannie and Freddie thing real quick, just to make sure everybody understands what's going on there. I wrote a big tweet immediately after I saw that the other day. And I wrote a big tweet yesterday to explain all of this. This is about what is Fannie and Freddie's what were their real role in the marketplace before they were stolen by Obama and put in conservatorship and all of that, which, by the way, I'm now convinced was a big British fucking plot. What a shock. Like, to destroy the housing industry and to bankrupt the middle class in the United States and make it impossible for small business owners to get consumer credit, which they did. And by doing that, they put the foreign creditors back into control of the long end of our yield curve. Because they, all that money that's sitting in foreign central banks and Eurodollar and banks around the world, they have control over our monetary policy because they can sell whenever they want. And there's no cushion on the domestic end to deal with that. That was what Fannie and Freddie's role was by making market mortgage-backed securities. They could come in and they could massage the yield curve through market forces by adjusting the rates of mortgages in order to, and this is, and you want to argue it's a free market thing. It's that we pooled the capital of all the homeowners and the demand for home buying in America, and they use that to control the long end of the yield curve. Okay, that's what Trump is saying. what he said was, we're going to spend that $200 billion and buy mortgage-backed securities. What he's trying to do is he's trying to tell the normies, I'm returning Fannie and Freddie back to their normal position in the marketplace. What he's also saying is that I can't IPO them at this point because of the shape that they're in, but I can restore that. I can uplist them back onto the New York Stock Exchange, get them recapitalized, and let the fixed income markets know that they're coming back in to cushion any attack on our capital markets by our foreign enemies, which in this case is Europe and the City of London, who are absolutely going to start bombing our yield curve because they already told us they're going to do so. And as a matter of fact, I'm watching it this week, and that's all I can see. FYI. So the attacks have already begun because they've already threatened to sell their foreign exchange, the central bank reserves. If you look at the situation with the standing repo facility and all of that stuff, that plumbing, right? I was talking about this earlier in the week as well. I hate the hog dividing reform. This is kind of important. The point being here is that everything that is about to happen when Jay Powell leaves the Fed and Trump puts his guy in. This is not to say that I still think Powell's done a masterful job of managing all the shit while Trump was out of power. It's what's going to happen next is he needs a Fed chairman that's going to bring interest rates down domestically, but still keep the cost of offshore dollars high. And that means they're going to deny hostile foreign actors access to dollar swap lines through the Fed. So there's a source of liquidity gone. Then there's the foreign banks that have access to the standing repo facility. That's going to go away. That's not going to go away, but the Fed has control over what the rate is that you can borrow from the standing repo facility. And I don't think it's going to be set at Fed funds going forward. I think it's going to be 50 to 75 basis points higher. Again, that market access charge that Vince Lanci and I have been talking about for 2 years now. You take those two things, and the only thing left they have is to dump their central bank reserves. And I think we're starting to see that. The latest tick data, Treasury International Capital data, is pointing in that direction. Of course, that data is 3 months in arrears, so at this point, so it is what it is. Now it's conjecture, but all the incentives are lining up, and all the threats have come, and all the worries have come out of major European officials. Central bank heads of state, former diplomats, all of these people have said, we're worried about dollar swap lines. We will dump U.S. Treasury debt if they don't come to war in Ukraine with us, blah, 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 blah. They've said all of these things. And they want to kick us out of NATO? Why? So France can nuke Moscow and start World War III? Okay. Feeling froggy, take that leap. We're staying in NATO, and you people aren't going to do shit. And you're going to take it. And I think that's what he's going to also say at Davos. So you're not kicking us out of NATO for nothing. We're the only thing constraining you European sons of bitches. Fuck off. No. World War III is off the table. Because we control the Brits' nukes. We control any nukes that Turkey has. We control all that stuff. We control the launch codes to that stuff. Or did we not see what export versions of anti-aircraft systems in Venezuela, that are of Russian and Chinese design look like when, there's a coordinated operation to attack Europe? Oh, they miraculously all got turned off because we didn't blow those up. They were all off.
Yes.
So go ahead. I'm sorry. There you go.
Right,
That's the big plumbing background to all of this shit. So yeah, David Icke. Yeah, just shut the fuck up, dude. Please go patch potholes in Peoria for a living. You would be more useful to the world.
Tom. Okay, Alex. What? Now, Tom, Alex, you can take it anywhere, right? But what Tom was led up to at the end is how the Europeans are going to react, and how Trump is going to react. By the way, I've had comments which said that you guys should all be in Trump's cabinet or something, or running the government. Okay.
No, I think I should be in charge, actually.
Can I be? I just want to be VP. Around and I can just say all the crazy shit that JD. I love JD Vance's VP, by the way, because it's like listening to a nicer version of me, or a more measured version of me. But then you realize that the guy's one, a trained killer, and two, a vindictive prick, and you're like, yeah, I don't want to be on the other end of that.
Alex.
Look, we'll find out. But the Europeans are making a lot of noise, and then they're not following up. They get together in Paris, and they have these signing ceremonies, and they pat each other on the back and hug and take pictures, and they give very important statements, but then nothing. They go home and they inform their cabinets and their parliaments, and they say like, well, yeah, but unless the Russians are on board, this really isn't going to work at all. So I don't know what they're trying to do. I think they have no plan B. I think they have no plan B. So they can't really give up their commitment to war, but they realize that they cannot fight the war without the United States, and they understand that the United States is not on board. So this is really like the Soviet Union, only much worse. Because I promise in the Soviet Union, like you had these old semi-demented people on top, but I don't remember there being such profound morons like Kaya Kallas. I think that this is a new level, a new high in idiocy that's running the place in Europe. And so as a result, they do their song and dance because they have to pretend to be important and relevant, and then they go home and they realize that they're not important and that they're not relevant, and then they hope the limelights just go away from them and that they can hide in their holes. And now Trump's going to come and set them straight. And I think that they're going to have to they're just going to have to accept it. And I think that Greenland is going to the United States, and after Greenland, I think it's Canada.
Oh wow! Canada's going to be way more expensive, but we're not going there yet, right? Oh, go on.
Well, Canada is in a lot of trouble with the United States. Canada is, United States is at the receiving end of 21st century opium war. I think there's no other way to characterize it, because if you look at the streets of the United States cities, the place is flooded not only with immigrants, it's also flooded with illegal drugs, fentanyl, methamphetamine, pot, all kinds of everything. And Trump said a lot of it is coming from Canada. And he said it kind of almost in passing, but there's been a huge deal of frustration from the US drug enforcement agencies with the Canadians, because there's a number of super labs in Canada that are synthesizing a lot of these drugs and then running them in the United States. And then the money is being laundered back into Canada. And the money always gets laundered back into the center of the operations. It's not random. But Canadians have all these rules that make it impossible for the United States to apprehend anybody. And there's been an extensive investigation into this money laundering scheme in British Columbia that's published online. I now forget what the name of the investigation is called, but Camden Commission or something like that. I forget. Anyhow, they published this thing, I think, in March 2022. And since then, nothing happened. And then it turns out that the Canadian TD Bank is the largest money laundering operation in the history of the United States. One executive resigned, no prison time, and they got like some fine, which I think was quite ridiculous, maybe $3 billion or something. And that was it. And the drug running organizations are still there. And then, they also have a rule that if you trace their phone numbers to locate them, the Canadian authorities have some kind of a role where they have to inform them that they're being targeted by law enforcement. And then once they inform, yeah, literally, and once they inform them, the people disappear. They change their movements, their addresses, they change their phone numbers, and then you have to start all over again. And the American side has been putting a lot of pressure on Canadians to, hey, work with us. We need to dismantle these networks. We need to dismantle these. It's not just people and drugs, it's also weapons. We need to dismantle these smuggling networks. And the Canadians consistently are asking, like, oh, there's nothing we can do. We just can't do that. That's our laws, our rules. That's how it is. And this is all coming at them because, as Susan brilliantly pointed out in her update earlier this week, Globe and Mail on Sunday had an editorial that said, the title was, "Is Venezuela's fate a warning to Canada?" And it felt like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? And then when you get into it, you realize that the guilty people, they know that it's coming for them. You understand?
Yep. And think of the difference. Think of the difference between Canada and, say, Mexico and Colombia. Trump just talked to the president of Colombia, and, basically he said, well, I explained to the president what my situation is. And in that same interview where Trump dropped Canada, he said, I work with Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, but she's terrified of the cartels. So in Colombia and Mexico and these other countries, they're under the gun of the cartels and the people who run the cartels. In Canada, they're not under the gun of anything. They're part of the operation.
They are the cartel.
They are the cartels.
Wow.
No, seriously, the central banking cartel. Susan, you're completely right. And Mark Carney is that guy. And we know that. And he's in burn it all down mode in Canada as well. I mean, he's in, if we can't have it, then, there's going to be nothing left for you.
Same thing's happening. Another interesting thing in terms of Mexico, people probably caught a couple of weeks ago, Mexico slapped huge tariffs on China in terms of auto imports, right? So Mexico's kind of, to the extent that they can do what Trump wants them to do, to the extent that they can, they are. Whereas Canada is completely, in full opposition to everything Trump is doing.
Because at the end of the day, don't ever forget, like Alex pointed out, and we've talked about in other shows, all that money wanders through the Canadian banks. The Canadian banks are the key to all of this. When they, and the more you think about it, and I've been thinking about this in terms of the gold and silver trade for many, many years now, and how that predatory relationship between the Canadian banks and the gold miners and silver miners was designed to ensure that the banks extracted all the wealth from the mine before the mine was commissioned. And then 90% of the mines that actually make it into production, basically pay back the loans. And the original shareholders of the bank and everybody else has to pay, winds up all the latecomers to the party in the investment scene betting on higher gold and silver prices. They're the ones left holding the bag for years. Well, then that money is then sent back to the banks to, launder and then used to run the operations on gold, the price capping operations on gold and silver. I mean, here's the as I was, while we're doing this, I just saw a huge article on Zero Hedge. Rio Tinto and Glencore getting together to merge into the largest mining company in the world. Not Glencore, is mostly just a commodities trader at this point. But they have to do this. They have to do this now because they're beginning to lose market share, and and they have to shorten up and tighten up their supply lines. They can't, fake being, working against each other anymore. Now they have to circle the wagons.
They're both Rothschild operations.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, Alex?
They are both Rothschild operations.
Right. Which, Alex, because we're going to finish up, points to the scale of the forces that Trump is up against, Trump and the other sovereignties. And I just want to make a quick mention to Ibrahim Traore. If people want to know what it is that Trump wants to put in place in the United States. They should look at what Ibrahim Traore is putting in place in Burkina Faso. And I posted a video about that on my channel. I think that went live yesterday.
I did watch that one. And that was excellent. That was excellent. I think that was a very important thing to have in mind. It was a lot about Thomas Sankara. And I didn't know that Thomas Sankara was actually mentored by one of the LaRouche people, the French Jacques Cheminade.
Oh, Cheminade. Okay.
I never knew this, but of course.
Yes.
So
thank you. Now I know what I'm going to be doing after this podcast, after we're done recording the show.
Well, Tom, you should be doing that anyway, because you subscribed and you comment and you like and all that business.
Well, I do of course I do all those things. And I comment on your, I love I don't know about you guys, but I love going into the comments on the YouTube videos that we're on. People think I don't read them, and it's hilarious.
Yes.
I'm like, I'm in there all the time. And they say some of the dumbest shit imaginable, like, where's my shotgun? Oh.
Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna finish up, right? And there is so much more to talk about, and we are going to be talking about the other stuff. So people, that's going to be coming up very, very soon. And I think that's it. We shall find out how it goes. Trump at the WF. I do remember his United Nations speech. That was something. Extempore without the teleprompter. That was something.
And nobody in the room heard it.
But plenty of people elsewhere heard it.
But the rest of us did.
Yes, and they will listen to it.
Get your popcorn ready.
Yes, yes.
Buy corn futures. The popcorn sales are going to go off.
I drink rye, but same thing. Same basic.
All right, all right. Susan, Tom, Alex, thank you so much. All the links in the description below, and speak to you all soon. All the best. Bye bye.